folks. So my name is Dakota Tangredi. Again, I work with Marion County Environmental Services as their bilingual waste reduction coordinator. Use he, him pronouns. And I am so excited to be here today to, of course, talk about waste reduction. We'll go into what that means. And then also, talk about recycling and composting as a part of it, but talk about some of the programs, wonderful volunteer efforts, and things that we're doing at the county level to support this in the community and how folks here can get involved and plug in, which I get really excited about. I'm only going to try and be around 20 or 30 minutes. So I'll be occasionally checking my phone just for time, just so it's not so one-sided. Folks have time to ask questions, and please feel free. As questions come up for you in the chat, please put them in there. I'm going to have a couple prompts where I ask you questions, and I would love your responses in the chat. And so I'll have Becky probably read those to me since I can't see them from this screen, as folks have their responses come in, because I love just to engage with y'all and make it a little more interesting, since Zoom presentations can be sometimes hard when they're just me talking at you. So yeah. All right, well, this is my reduce and reuse Marion County presentation. We'll hop right into it. Let's see here. Some slides don't want to advance. There we go. All right. So just to give a bit of a overview of our programming, we are a humble team of two, and we have two really big programs: a master recycler program for me, which is our volunteer program, and then Rachel Van Wert, my colleague, the Earthwise program. And so in terms of community waste reduction and what we offer as a county, we are able to offer free technical assistance for businesses, schools, multifamily apartments, public and community groups around those topics of waste reduction, recycling, and composting. And this is all free, right? As a local government entity, we offer environmental education around waste reduction, climate change, material consumption, well-being, and resourcefulness. And we'll talk about that too. And really, yeah, like I said, volunteer programming and community action is big for us too, because we are small. Volunteers are an extension of our work, and we so appreciate all of the amazing things they do. So, the ways that we do offer this assistance, is y'all can really request education, free materials, that technical assistance. We love coming out on site visits, talking with you, coming to present to your groups. Our volunteer course is free. And Earthwise, I'll touch on a little bit later, that my colleague is the specialist in, is a sustainable business certification, which is awesome. That comes with a lot of different benefits. And then we also offered, things like this, webinars, continuing education. We have a monthly sustainability luncheon over Zoom that we host with those webinars, and tours of our solid waste facilities. So if you're wanting to go to a MRF, a materials recovery facility, to see stuff get sorted by machines and people, there's really great opportunities to see how our system works a little bit better. And so I'll probably take a few minutes going just super fundamental, so we're all on the same page. When I'm using terms like waste hierarchy and reduction versus recovery, I do want to just sort of spell out what that means for our programming and how it relates to y'all. And then I'll go into, of course, the action items, but I think it's really important to get us on the same page. So this is the waste hierarchy, or the waste reduction hierarchy, it's sometimes called. And I do want to sort of draw this difference between waste reduction and recovery, right? I've said that waste reduction term a few times. But waste reduction really means that we're preventing that material, or those discards, from ever being produced in the first place, right? So recycling is not waste reduction. Recycling is recovery, right? We've already gotten those materials out of the earth, extracted them, we've made the product, and yeah, we're recycling it to recover a little bit of energy and materials, but we didn't prevent usage of the materials in the first place. So true prevention, or waste reduction, is using less of a material, pardon me, or really not buying or purchasing it at all, right? And of course, we have rescue or reuse, which is also technically waste reduction, buying secondhand from the store, repairing your items to continue using, to displace, purchase of new items, right? And of course, our least sort of preferred option there is disposal. And so, the really big thing here is we talk a lot about recycling. It gets a lot of, talk and spotlight, but really the biggest bang for your buck is not, producing those materials in the first place and looking for ways to reuse, right? It really is a rank ordered list, those 3 R's that we talk about. Reduce comes first, and it's by and far away. by like orders of magnitude so much more environmentally beneficial than recycling, although we'll talk about it today. All right, my last sort of philosophical thing before we get into action is folks are familiar with the concept of donut economics. Here's our donut, and I'll show the other donut. But obviously we have limited resources on this planet, and that relates to climate change and climate action, right? And so we know that there's this ecological ceiling, right, in which we have limits to how many resources we have on this earth. So it's really important we're good stewards of those materials and resources, right? But I also don't want to guilt people into not consuming anything. That's a really popular message. Don't buy anything. At some level, we have to consume, right, to live good lives as humans. So the balance with donut economics is we have our donut here, and that lower concentric ring, or the first one, is the social foundation. So we have to consume enough to live well, to have a good quality of life. And then that has to be balanced with that ecological ceiling. So in the middle is that sweet spot. So we don't consume or use so much that we go beyond our ecological or environmental limits, but we don't consume too little that we're not able to keep our social foundation and keep a good quality of life. So I'm certainly not here to tell people to never buy anything, but think about different ways we can be resourceful and use materials to their highest and best use, we say, or to use them until they're really exerted. All right, so this is my first prompt for y'all, and I hope folks can see it. In Marion County and Oregon, every 5 years, we do what's called a waste composition study. Basically, we take all of our garbage in a different waste shed. So folks might be familiar with the term watershed, where water drains. Waste sheds are counties, basically. So where all of your trash and recyclables and stuff is produced. So Marion County is a waste shed. And they do these wonderful studies where they look at what is in your trash on average for that year. And so, we obviously see these categories here that they weigh it out by. There's food waste, paper waste, and on the left is curbside residential, so at home, what folks are throwing away. And then on the right is commercial waste, so businesses, right? So there's food waste, paper waste, animal waste, plastics, generally diapers, that's a big one, metal, textiles, so like cloth and clothes and fibers, and then other organics class. So this is my first prompt for you. Does anything about what we throw away in Marion County, does anything surprise you? Would you expect different results? And so please type in the chat to that question. Is there anything that surprises you? Anything you want to chew on that you see, oh my gosh, food waste is a huge portion, or, oh, plastic is a really small portion. I thought it would be bigger. What are folks' first initial responses to this? And you can put that in the chat for Becky to read out.
We've got no replies yet. Oh, we do have one. There's a lot more animal waste.
Right. Well, yeah, and in some ways, oh, sorry, continue.
Very frustrated on many levels with food waste.
Right. I am too. That's one of those categories that's actually really environmentally impactful, right? So reducing it actually helps our carbon budget go down in terms of how much carbon we put into the air. It's a really impactful one. So the good news is we have a lot, we can only go up with improvement, which is good. But yes, it's very frustrating.
Another one, kitty litter is challenging.
Yeah, it is. And the good thing about animal waste being in the garbage is that's where it needs to go. You cannot put animal waste in compost. Do not do it. It's really not helpful. It doesn't make good compost. And that compost that they're trying to make has to be thrown out. So it's really good that it goes in the garbage. And I don't want you to feel guilty about throwing what needs to go in the garbage, right? Some of this is like, oh, we wish we could recycle everything. Sometimes it's really just better in the garbage, and that's okay.
We did get another comment, very concerned with less plastic disposal options.
Right. And so the really interesting thing, I'll touch on it. Let me see my time check. Cool. Interesting. So folks might imagine that plastic would be higher, right? This is only 11%. And I think if we looked on average in our garbage cans, we'd go, plastic makes up way more of my average garbage can. I'm throwing stuff out for the week and taking it to the curb or wherever. And something that there's a little bit of a gap in this study is that it's all by weight or by tonnage, right? Volume, or plastic is really light. So plastic would actually be better measured in volume, right? How much space it takes up, because clearly there's a ton of plastic. It takes up a lot of space. It doesn't weigh a lot, but it takes up a lot of space, right? And as we know, it's in our environmental systems all over the world now. But to continue on your comment, really, again, the best thing to do with plastic in some cases really is to just throw it away. I know it sounds really horrible, but landfills ensure that it doesn't leave, it doesn't go into our water systems, it doesn't go into the ocean. When we erroneously or incorrectly put what we think is recyclable in terms of plastics in our recycling bin, there's a chance they could be sent overseas and pollute their environments. So really, it's much better to throw those plastics away. They're managed correctly. And the plastics that we are able to recycle, those are sent to responsible, what we call end markets, where they're made into new things, right? So I know it's hard in that way, but trash needs to be trash, and recycling, it's really important it stays on that recycling list. And I'll talk about that. But yes, I'm concerned too. And that's where we can go, hey, recycling's not the answer, but reduction is better. Any other comments?
Yeah, comment about like 100% of a person's garbage is with plastic food packaging and kitty litter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that's mostly in my house too. It's a
Yeah.
lot of plastic packaging.
Yeah.
And then it's a shame that there is so much commercial food waste.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. And I will say, so there is a lot of commercial food waste, but I will say when we think about food waste generally in the US, most of our food waste is at the post-consumer. So when it comes, so say we're eating dinner at the table, as a family or whoever, adults or people in our lives, really we actually produce the most food waste on our end. And so we know that we waste about 40% of food in this country. And about 1 in every 4 bites when you're at the dinner table, again, it's just an average, you might eat all your food, but about 1 in 4 bites at the post-consumer level when we're eating it is wasted, right? So that's important. Most of this food waste, even though in this sense in Marion County it's commercial, most of it really comes from our side too. So I do have some great resources for folks about food waste too, I can share later on. But
And
yes,
we did have
it's frustrating.
a question in here also. How
Yeah.
can we stop using non-recyclable plastics for packaging?
Yeah, that's a really hard one. And the really great thing is, I'll move on so I can finish up a little bit because folks are having great comments. I'm so happy we're engaging. But SB 582, or the Plastics Pollution and Recycling Modernization Act, just passed in August. And we're really excited about it in the solid waste industry because it holds the producers of these packaging, right? Coca-Cola, the people that make our packaging, it holds them responsible for, one, when it makes sense, making those materials recyclable. When it doesn't make sense, and in general, making sure that the environmental impact of producing those things, because right, the most carbon, energy, water usage really comes from making the thing, as opposed to if we can recycle it or not. Making sure that those impacts are really low when we produce and design a product. So that's great. In terms of plastic packaging, only 9% of plastics have ever been recycled in all of plastics history. So I would not bank on trying to find more recyclable plastics. What I would encourage you to do, when possible, is to avoid the stuff. And that's so hard, and that's such a bad answer, but it comes to things like bringing your reusable bags. It comes to things like, when you can, self-serving with a cloth bag for your veggies and your fruits. When you have those things at Fred Meyer or Safeway where you can go up to them and dispense yourself. A lot of times it's going to be that creative solution type thing, and that's the vote with your dollar. That said, sweeping policy is what we need to really ditch plastics. But in many ways, avoidance is so much better than recycling because they're not going to be recycled at a higher rate. All right, folks have some really great questions. I'm happy I cultivated some engagement there. Pardon me. I'm going to keep moving on so we can finish up on time. See if I can.
We do have one more question. We can get it at the end though, or if you want it now.
Yeah, why don't, well, okay. Can you
Okay.
tell me and then I'll deem if I
Sure.
can.
It's, can Marion County partner with TerraCycle for plastics?
They're a separate service, and so they would have to be probably a bigger conversation with the garbage and recycling haulers. TerraCycle, for folks that don't know, TerraCycle does a lot of interesting recycling of hard to recycle objects. They even do like cigarette butts. They do a lot of things, and they basically have these boxes that they send you, and you collect them, your stuff in them, and then you send them back, and they make sure that they go to responsible end markets. but it can be really tricky because that changes the whole system. And like I said, in some cases, it actually doesn't make sense to recycle certain materials. It sounds really strange. It's actually less environmentally impactful to throw them away. And I know that's against the paradigm of what we've heard, but the example I like to use is 3 different containers for coffee. Folks know the classic aluminum or steel tin, then the Folgers, red tub, and then these newfangled plastic laminate bags we have. You get at Starbucks or at the store, and you pop them open, and you have your already ground up coffee, and then they're really thin and they're plasticky. Most folks would go, I think that the steel or the aluminum can is the best option. And then maybe Folgers is better. And then the one that you can throw away that's not recyclable is always the worst. In reality, that plastic metallic little bag is the best packaging and the least environmentally impactful. It produces the least amount of waste to make it, uses the least amount of electricity to make it, and least amount of water and carbon to make it. So it's this weird thing of sometimes the recyclable option is really not better. So that's my hard, I want to get into it, but I can't in this presentation answer to that. All right, thank you for that. Those great questions. I'm wondering, my slides are not wanting to advance on me. There's always trickiness with this. Sorry, everybody. If I can move this around. Let's get up. Let me just stop sharing super fast and see if it'll fix it. All right, there we go. Oh, you came up really quick. There we go. All right, move along. So while I said recycling is not all that, I do want to just briefly run over the materials just as a reminder for folks so people know that this is their recycling list resource. This is the recycle right. It's a little card. I've split it up so I can look at each part. I'm going to run through each thing pretty quickly. And if folks have questions, I'll answer at the end about materials. So this is another place right now to prompt you. What materials, what packaging is confusing? Are you unsure about when you think about curbside recycling? That even goes for hard to recycle items, things like couches, bigger, what we call bulky waste, mattresses. So please put your questions in there as I'm just going through. I'm not going to answer that until the end, but I want to just let you know this is curbside recycling that's available for you. And this is the Marion County specific list, right? Because it's different in every county recycling rules. So paper, our paper recycling and our mixed bin, our blue bin, or whatever our mixed recycling bin, that's we call commingled, it all goes together. Things like paper, cardboard, cereal boxes, greeting cards, not with foil or glitter, magazines, newspapers, even phone books, paperback books, and cardboard and things, right? So pretty comprehensive there on the paper side. In terms of plastics, as we know, it's a bit more limited. As an aside, recycling is really business driven. So it's all about markets. If there's not a market for a certain plastic material, it doesn't have value to someone who wants to buy it to make it into something new. We really can't ask y'all in all earnest to pick it up, right? Because it won't get recycled. So what we know there's a market for and what people want to make into something new is plastic bottles and jugs. And so again, we don't use the number on the bottom, what we call the resin type. It's really just by shape and by size. So it's this shape is the most desirable and what we want. So nothing to do with that number on the bottom. That means nothing here in Marion County. And then metal, that's steel and aluminum cans, tuna cans, soup cans. The lids you can also recycle. You pop them in the can, crimp the top, and that's the way that they stay in there to be recycled. Yeah, those are our big 3 categories. And then for Salem, recycling tote or basket, they call it. And this is the extra recycling on the side. So not everyone has this, just these 3 areas. And you have battery recycling. You can recycle glass bottles and jars. Used motor oil, as long as it's contained, right, and wrapped up. Paints, antifreeze, and cooking oil. So those are your extras. All right, moving along, I'm going to talk compost. Then we're going to get into the interesting waste reduction pieces that I get excited about. So in terms of curbside composting, this is, again, what we call mixed organics. Your green bin, sometimes it's not green, depending where you are, but it's only available in Salem, Kaiser, Woodburn, Silverton, Staten, and Jefferson. And so why it's called mixed organics is you can put yard debris and food scraps in there. And again, I know people might have questions about fibers, so pizza boxes or napkins, please put those in the chat. I'll try to get to them. If you have questions, that's always a hot topic. And so yeah, really anything, fruit, veg, meats, greases, oils, milk products, grains, really any food goes in there. Again, no pet waste, not compost. But yeah, it's a pretty diverse set there for folks to pick up. And if you need more resources, you can see below around like home composting and hot or cold composting systems in your backyard, for example. You're turning your compost in piles maybe. We have a relationship with OSU Extensions. They have some great resources and their Master Gardener program to learn more about composting specifically. All right, and this is a quick shout out to, I talked about a sustainable business program. It's called Earthwise. And so businesses that are interested not only in waste reduction, but sustainability more generally, can take advantage of this free service. My colleague Rachel will come out to your site, get you certified. And there's always opportunities for grants, which is really cool. So, you can do audits, you can do energy audits, food waste audits, where we look at how much energy, look what you're throwing away, and try to make improvements there. There's networking. So you're part of, now over 200 businesses that are getting resources about these things. You have peer mentors, you have industry tours, there's virtual webinars for you. So if you know businesses that are interested in this, it'd be a great resource. Like I said, yearly grants, we have materials, so manuals, databases. Try before you buy packaging. So if you're interested in a certain sustainable packaging, we help you out with that. And really, they help with green teams and so many other resources. So I won't get into that today, but that's a great resource if you know a business owner, really of any type, restaurant, insurance, whatever, that's interested in looking at business certification. So my other big program that I talked about, this is our waste reduction side, I get so excited about, is our volunteer program. So it was formerly called Master Recyclers. It's going through a rebrand, and folks might remember it. But our classes for folks who are interested in signing up and learning about our integrated solid waste and recycling system can sign up for this free multi-week course. It's one evening a week for 7 weeks, a couple hours in the evening after work. And basically, you're getting trained as a volunteer in things like sustainable consumption and resourcefulness, climate protection, reuse and repair of products. And you're learning about all these cool topics that we're getting into really briefly today. It's more of a deep dive. And then you're doing community action projects in Marion County. And there's opportunity for volunteer project mini grants when you want to blow up your project a little more and invest in your community. So we have some really cool programming there for you to engage and volunteer with us. And that's really what I head up as a Master Recycler Coordinator. And we have hundreds of volunteers that are really long-time volunteers that have been with us for a long time. This class has been around for about 24 years. So please connect with me about that. I'll have my email at the end. All right, so this screen sharing toolbar is in my way. Move it down here, great. So I'm gonna go through some different categories of waste reduction that hopefully are useful for you at different levels, right? Whether it's at home or school. So really a mantra we try to live by is, consumption, like we talked about, can be scary. There's a lot of misconceptions or preconceived notions about it, but we try to use the word resourceful. And we get this from Resourceful PDX, great partners that do this work. So in terms of how you can reduce waste at home, and whether you're in an apartment or single family, there are these 4 tips we have for you. Buying smart, so when you can, buy reused. Look to use as much as you can. Look for experiences over stuff that you might just throw away. And with reuse, again, you're using things like Secondhand, Poshmark, Craigslist, all of these great reuse markets that are out there that are right for the taking and save money. Borrowing and sharing. So we have a couple of different tool libraries here in Marion County where we can rent out tools. Salem library is now unveiling their library of things. So you can rent things like games or tools, just like you would a book, to make that an easier process for you. And you don't have to buy the thing. You can try it before you buy. And we know that the average drill is only used for about 12 minutes over its lifespan, right? So why buy something we're not going to use? And then fix and maintain. I'll talk about some of these programs we have. They're called repair fairs, and there's something I'm really passionate about and would love for folks to connect on. If folks have repair skills, I'll talk more about that. But these are sort of the tips we live by as we think about general ways to reduce waste and live well. So I talked about waste reduction in schools. And I'm coming up, I have about 4 minutes, so I'll bust a move. But for folks that are interested in schools, if you're a teacher here, if you want to get your students connected, I do a little bit of schools work as well as some grants work with schools. So you can see me there, I'm goofy. We do what are called food waste audits, right? So we go to a cafeteria lunch period and students sort the food waste and other waste categories that they find, right? So they're collecting waste, we're weighing it, and much like that waste composition study, we're thinking about, okay, what's in our waste stream? What recommendations can we then make to our nutrition services coordinators, right? So if we're using paper plates, for example, can we look to trays and durables? If we're looking at, we're wasting a lot of milk, right? And we're creating cartons that are thrown away and can't be recycled. How do we reduce that milk waste and reduce carton waste? And so this is a cool grant program that I'm working on where we have funds for schools to buy milk dispensers. And some folks might go, I remember those. That's not a very new concept, that's old school, but they're really great. They're shown to produce less carton waste, obviously, because it's just cups, reusable cups you can wash. And students drink more of their milk. It's fresher and they get to choose how much they want, right? So really cool things like that. This grant also covers durables. So if you're wanting to switch away from, plastic forks and plates, we can support schools in that. All right. And then this is the repair movement. We're doing on time. Great, 2 minutes. Repair movement and repair fairs. So for folks that are really passionate about offering their skills as what we call fixperts, you can basically work at a repair fair. And the basic concept of a repair fair is that fixpert volunteers, they might be master recyclers, they might be other volunteers that we've recruited over the years, they fix your stuff for free. The only catch is you just have to sit with them while they fix it, right? So this is about sharing skills. It's about making sure things don't go into the landfill. And it's about empowering you to look for opportunities to repair instead of throwing something away and buying new. So it's this really great information sharing in a great accessible way to make repair doable and accessible for folks. Because in some cases, independent repair can be really expensive, as we know. So this is something we're doing a lot more of, and we'll see more events at schools and community libraries as well. And I'm really passionate about it in the county. This is that library of things I was talking about with Salem. They basically did a survey and asked people what they would want, tools, games, things of that nature, to reduce the amount of things we buy. Another community thing we do is community swaps. So if you're an organization, a group, whoever that wants to organize a swap, basically, for folks that don't know, swaps are, you bring people together, they bring stuff that's used, people can take it for free, right? So it doesn't go to the landfill. We don't have to take more resources out of the earth to make new stuff. And people, again, it's new to me, right? It's new to you if it's even if it's secondhand. So it's a really cool opportunity to keep stuff in circulation and get people low cost and free items. One of the last things, we're almost there, is durables programs. So this last summer, we worked with Manual Lutheran and Woodburn, and those folks basically do weekly meals for food insecure and whoever needs a meal for dinner. And so they were using about 22,000 throwaway single-use clamshell or those little like takeout containers. And so they said, gosh, this is costing us so much money as a church with very little funds. We're spending most of our money on this instead of food for these disposable containers. Marion County, what can we do? And so we work with them to buy 1,000 reusable, washable Eco Jade containers that folks can basically take when they drive up with their meal, take home, and then bring them back to us dirty. And we had a sanitization and wash area. And so we give them a fresh one, they give us the dirty. And so these last for 7 years. They're BPA free. They go in the microwave, they can be in the freezer. And we basically avoided that 22,000 containers going into landfill each year. And it was a reduction of $8,000 spent a year for them. So it was a really cool program, right? So back to that, how do we reduce plastics or reduce packaging? Look towards durables. That's really the answer in some ways. All right. And so that was sort of a quick deep dive into programming. I really encourage folks to follow us, Marion County Environmental Services, on our Facebook and our Instagram. That's where you can find a lot of updates on events and educational opportunities. And then we also have Marion County Environmental Services website. So that free recycle guide, the little recycle right tag card I showed, that's available on there for you to print. And this is really the site that is the authority for waste reduction and waste management in Marion County. It's mcrecycles.net. All right, so I'll take questions now. It looks like I kept myself to 32 minutes, and we could probably just finish up with questions and any other things you have. So thanks everyone so much, and I will stop sharing my screen.
Right, we do have some questions in the chat. So our first one, can we leave labels and package tape on cardboard boxes? What about tape on gift wrap?
Yeah, generally it's fine to leave tape. If you have time to do it, it's fine. They have mechanisms for, for example, if you get an Amazon box, there's always that tape on the top of it. They generally have mechanisms for removing that tape and keeping the fibers. If you want to, great, makes it a little bit easier for them, but generally it's okay to keep on.
Next one, why can't we recycle or compost egg cartons?
So yeah, basically, and it's sort of weird because we think of recycling as a really good thing to do. Recycling is a business, and I can't reiterate this enough. It's all about those markets. So in Marion County, we don't have someone that we can sell to. And again, Marion County is a government. We're not controlling the operations of recycling. We work with the garbage and recycling haulers who are doing that disposal and recycling. They're the ones that, we tell them what we need in terms of requirements and work with them on the recycling list. But they're really the ones that can determine, gosh, are we going to be able to recycle this? So it's all about markets. And at this point in time, there's no one who wants to buy egg cartons in our county, at least, to make them into something new, right? And so in other places, like in the metro region and Clackamas, Washington, and Multnomah, they have folks that they, get those egg cartons to. But one solution for that, if you know local farmers who have chickens, they're always looking for more cartons to sell those things in. Again, it's a perpetual, okay, we've created more cartons, but looking to either reuse them or get them to partners that need them, right? So in this way, it's better to toss them, and really just there's no market for them in that way. So yeah, it's like a weird answer. It's hard because we want to recycling should be the right thing, but it really ends up money.
And our next one, can you discuss friends in apartments with no access to green bins and no yards to make compost? So they use sink disposal. I think garbage is better alternative than sink disposal. Please discuss.
Sure. Yeah, so I think you're pointing at a really important point, and that's the inequity in systems between multifamily, so apartment living, and single family. So for folks that don't know, multifamily has no composting options, right? They can't have a green bin or your brown bin, right? Because multifamily is technically what we call commercial. They're actually a business, right? It makes sense if you think about who pays the bill, right? You have a property manager, right? They're the ones that control all of the garbage and recycling accounts, right? It's one account. And so people have a lot less control and agency, right? When we've all lived in apartments, or I hope, that experience we can empathize is that, you just have the service and you get what you get. And commercial composting is extra money, right? But really no multifamily apartments have commercial composting. For that reason, it's extra expense. And then also what happens is composting is so important in some ways, but what happens is we talk about contamination with recycling, you throwing stuff that's really garbage that you want to be recyclable. That's contamination. It's the wrong stuff that goes in recycling. It's really trash. And what happens is in multifamily apartments, because there's this inequity in education, they tend to throw the wrong stuff in recycling anyway. And then there's also high contamination in your food compost bin. So in that food compost bin, you can only put food, right? But sometimes people put cans, they put plastics, they put things that really shouldn't be in there. And when this contamination rate happens and it's too high too many times, basically the haulers will pull the service, because that means they have to throw out those materials and it hurts their bottom line. So because of the high contamination rates, it's not been something that's been attempted, and it costs extra for property managers. And it can sometimes be column Z. They have a lot to think about, and just letting them know that recycling is something that needs to be offered to our residents is already a really big challenge. So what I will say is the alternative to this is something called share waste. You can type it online on Google. And share waste is this really cool sort of community driven service where there's these free waste or compost sites within the community, right? So if people in a multifamily partner with someone who has a single family house and says, hey, I want to bring some of my scraps to put them in your bin, is that okay? There is a mechanism for doing that, but there's nothing on really a large scale to do so. So I know it's a big answer, but it's unfortunately, there's some inequities in the system, and that legislation is hopefully going to help fix that. But multifamily certainly is not as, I would say, accessible as single family homes in this space.
Next up, it seems there are Amazon boxes and plastic envelopes in everyone's blue containers or blue bins. What relationship does Marion County have with Amazon in terms of reduce and recycle of cardboard and plastic?
Oh boy, that's a good question. So that bill that I talked about, SB 582, the Plastics Pollution Recycling Modernization Act, it brings generators to the table. I can't speak to Amazon, but this is the essential issue, right? Doesn't mean it's the only issue, but the education around recycling, what's garbage and what's truly recyclable in your local system. Many times people are getting it from the packages, and that's not their fault, right? People might not know that I exist or my organization or like local government exists, the resources exist, so I can't fault them. And so when we learn from our packaging what we think is recyclable, and they put a chasing arrow, the little recycle symbol on there, without ever consulting local government or ever consulting local systems, we really don't have control. We do education around contamination, but as a small team, it's so impossible to really get our reach. We do a lot of promotion and advertising, all this stuff. So hopefully this bill will bring these generators into the fold and say, hey, you actually have to, we have what's called a truth in labeling task force that's part of this, and they're working through, are we going to allow businesses that sell packaging and products in our state to put that recycling symbol on there if they know that it's not recyclable, right? So what are the actual standards for that, which is really exciting, right? Because then we can get past this confusion, because a lot of times it's incorrect. Sorry, I keep getting notifications from Teams. I'm gonna turn it off. So definitely a great question. I wonder if I can just silence this. But yeah, they don't communicate with us. We would love to have a relationship with them as producers, but a lot of times they're just selling stuff in here, and it looks good when it's recyclable, right? People go, I want to buy that because it's called greenwashing. People making undeclared statements about their sustainability of a product. In reality, there's nothing to back that up.
Question, where can I take some small metal items that were burned in fires?
Sorry, muted. That's got to happen at least once every meeting. So that's a great question. It really depends on what those are, and maybe I could email you later. In some cases, they're probably just trash. If they're only burned, and they probably would be melted down anyway, you could probably take them to Salem Kaiser transfer station if you're closer to that one, or North Marion transfer station if you're more in Woodburn and North Marion. But I'd have to know exactly what those were.
Here. Oh, good one. I see so many ways to connect Kaiser residents to resources and services. Let's see, we've got about those bag recycle bins at grocery stores. Is it helpful in recycling, or do the bags get thrown in waste stream? What bag products can go in these store bag recycle bins? Produce bags, bread bags, Amazon bubble envelopes.
Gotcha. So just to say this really quickly, just at the top of it. So your curbside recycling, your bin at your house, your multifamily, just so we know, bags are never recyclable. They're always trash, right? These plastic bags. But when you haul those bags, what you're touching on there, when you haul those bags to a grocery store that has a film drop off, they can be recycled there. But just so we know, they are never recyclable curbside. They get stuck in the machines when we sort them. And they actually put workers at risk because they have to cut these bags out of the sorting machines, and they're not recycled. So don't ever put them in your mixed bin, do not bag your recyclables in a plastic bag, put them in a paper bag and recycle them that way, or just throw them in loose, right? So that plastic bag should never go in curbside mixed bins, just so we know. So at the film drop off, that is a partnership with Trex. Trex is, I believe, in Arizona, and they make composite plastic decking out of the plastics, which is cool, right? They recycle it into another product. So the things that can go in there, like you said, bread bags, plastic bags. A good way to tell, like things that, the wrapping of your toilet paper, a good way to tell is if you have the bag around your thumb and you push it and it stretches for those type of films, that's a good way to know that it's a film that's accepted. So like that stretchy, it pulls away. You don't necessarily, you can't you pop through immediately, but it's a little bit of stretch there. But yeah, most of the bread bags, plastic bags, and toilet paper roll film there as well.
Okay, and back to the like sink disposal. The question was contrast in sink disposal, better or worse than garbage?
So it really depends on what your system, and I can't speak to because I don't know the exact system for jurisdiction or city, but in reality, yeah, it's really better. I think I used to do this for a long time too. I'd trick myself into going, oh, I'm putting it to the, my garbage disposal, it's going to be recycled or eaten up somehow. It needs to be garbage, right? Because what happens is when we put that in garbage disposal, it really clogs up the system, especially if you live in a rural area. So example, city of Aurora is having issues with this. People are putting way too much food in their garbage disposals, and that's hurting their wastewater. It's clogging up their water treatment systems and becoming a real issue. So it's much better to just throw your food away when it's garbage, right? If you have mixed organics, that extra bin in those areas, do that. But it's just not super great, because what happens too is if something is really greasy or oily, it clogs up your pipes in the system that much more, and it creates those, folks might be familiar with those fat bergs they see like in pipes, where it's gross, it's like hair and fats and all this stuff that really shouldn't go in the system. So I would advise throwing it away. Or, sometimes too, if folks are interested, you don't have composting. We have the small tabletop composters for your kitchen, that if you want to do some composting or put it in someone else's bin and collect your scraps for the week, we have those too. But it's just not good for the system. So really just throw it away when you can. And also the Amazon envelopes, that's never a plastic drop off. It's always garbage. And I will say something to that though. People might go, oh, it's plastic, it's bad. It's actually, so this is the weird thing. Those plastic envelopes, they're very light, right? So if we think about this from a carbon emissions perspective, Amazon ships stuff all over the world, right? And when you ship heavier things, they use more fuel, which is more emissions that are burned in the air. So while those plastic bags aren't recyclable, or those plastic envelopes, right? It's like the double wrap and plastic on that side. While they're not recyclable, they're very light. They actually reduce the amount of emissions associated with packaging. And so cardboard is heavier and actually is more intensive to use. Yes, it's recyclable, but it needs more emissions to be shipped and to be made. So while that might seem like, why are we doing plastic now? It's actually, for them, it's a money thing, but it's also, it reduces carbon emissions. And I don't know if they've thought about that, but it's actually, it's a byproduct of using plastic shipping envelopes, which is actually great.
Well, it looks like that wraps up our questions in the chat, unless I missed something. So if I did miss your chat, please put it back in there so we can make sure to answer your questions. And I think we're looking like we're clear. So thank you, Dakota, again for joining us today. And unless we have any other questions, I think we're ready to wrap up.
Awesome. Yeah, I just want to appreciate everyone's great engagement, good presentations. And I'll send this along to Becky and other partners. But really, if you're interested in doing a deep dive on some of these issues, volunteering in the community, trying to reduce plastics, doing these great projects, April 28th, it's a Thursday night. It's the start of our 7-week class. It's free. Come join us, become a volunteer, and talk with like-minded people who care about these issues as well. We always are looking for more folks to go through the program and contribute hours to the cause and things that people are passionate about. So really excited. for that to relaunch, because we haven't had the in-person course in 2 years. So really encourage folks to reach out, and I'll send information on how to sign up.
Great. Yeah, if you could send that along to me, I will send you all an email next week that has that information, and get you in contact with Dakota. Thank you, and hopefully we'll see some of you next month for First Fridays.